followed by the public hearing on the state's proposed NPDES permit for the Tennessee Valley Authority Kingston Fossil Plant. My name is John Croy, and I'm facilitating tonight's public hearing. We are also conducting, as you can see, this hearing online using WebEx. For anyone who isn't familiar with WebEx, I'll go over some general information that might be helpful. Everyone was muted upon entry to reduce background noise, and we ask that you remain muted unless you're asking a question during the Q&A session. You can find the mute or unmute button in the bottom of your screen. It looks like a microphone. Just please make sure that you have a slash mark through that little microphone, and we also ask that you keep your camera off. So right now I'd like to introduce our Tdex staff. With me in the room is Petey Roach. She's helping everyone get registered, and if you need an agenda tonight, she's got a couple more coming, so please feel free to ask at the end of the public hearing. We'll make sure that you have those. Online joining us, we have our permit writer, Voyan Yannick. Voyan, you want to wave?
Oh, sure. Sorry.
We also have joining us Drake Smarch, Liz Campbell, and I saw Wade on there, but I guess he's not there anymore. Oh, there he is. Okay, Wade Murphy. All right, so we have quite a team that we will be able to answer your questions, and feel free during this session, to ask those, because this session is for you. All right, the public hearing is going to start at 5:30. At this time, I would like to refer you to our agenda. We have the question and answer session with the permit writer, Voyan. Again, please take time to ask questions during this Q&A session. So right now, Voyan's going to discuss the proposed permit and answer your questions. We're going to take your questions. First, we'll call on in-person attendees, and then we'll call on those participants joining online. So Voyan, I'll hand it over to you.
John, I'm ready. Thank you for the introduction. And I will try my best to find a balance between talking too much and leaving enough time for everyone to ask questions in this segment. Mind you, I don't have to catch a plane anytime after public hearing. So our idea is to try to help everyone understand what is this proposed permitting action about, and what's going to happen next with respect to NPDES permit. My name is Voyan Yannick. I'm the manager of the Water-Based Systems Unit in Division of Water Resources, and we are, among other things, in charge of preparing and implementing NPDES permits for the state of Tennessee. This particular permit is a permit for discharges from Kingston Fossil Plant that is out for a modification. This modification is based on revisions to steam electric effluent limitation guidelines. These are, let me speak a little bit about those effluent limitation guidelines. They are federal rules. They're published in a federal register, and they are a way to make an even playing field with respect to technology-based limits across the nation. So we always, when preparing NPDES permits, look at water quality and technology-based limits, compare the two, and we implement the more restrictive of the two as a permit limit in the new proposed permitting action. These new effluent limitation guidelines were published in October of 2020, and they contain similar content as the previous set of effluent limitation guidelines. The original ones came out in 1982. They were revised in 2015. We have this revision from 2020, and honestly, expecting even more revisions coming up from EPA. The reconsideration of this particular rule was modified limits for flue gas desulfurization discharges. That's the process where sulfur dioxide is removed as an air pollutant and removed in wet scrubbers and transferred really into the water phase. And the pollutants from that waste stream need to be treated before discharge. And then also a discharge allowance to up to 10% of the volumetric bottom ash purge water discharge. So the update changes some of the technology basis for treatment of waste streams. It revises the voluntary incentives program. Now, what does that mean? Voluntary incentives program is really providing more stringent limits, but much longer compliance dates. This new revised rule also added some subcategories for generating units and established new compliance dates. So guideline specific definitions from this effluent limitation guideline rule were included in the permit, and a lot of these are applicable to steam electric plants in Tennessee. Not all of these effluent limitation guidelines were applicable to Kingston. However, we have included all of these options in the permit rationale to make sure we have covered all of the possible subcategories for the permit. A number of factors will have to be taken into account for TVA to make a decision which of these particular categories and subcategories will be applicable and implemented at the facility. And in many ways, what had happened parallel to issuance of the draft permit is EPA decision, which is documented in their letter. You can see all of the documentation related to this particular permit file on Tdex data viewer. Permit tracking number, I'm sure you know it, is TN00054552. So you can look at the data viewer and see that in a planned participation option, TVA decided that Kingston plant is due to closure. So one can argue and say that many of these, and I believe it will not all happen at the same time, it will be a phased closure in 2026 and 27. So one can argue, TDEC, why are you even modifying this permit? Why are you even doing anything? Isn't it all a moot point since this facility will be closed and discharge no pollutants related to any of these waste streams today? And the answer to that question is that in the meantime, there are deadlines and requirements for effluent treatment and quality of the treated wastewater at the facility that must be complied with. And if those deadlines are slated to kick in before the deadline for or TVA's intent to close the facility, then those effluent limitations must be complied with. Then another thing to consider is that this October 2020 effluent limitation guideline provides an opportunity for facilities across the nation to use different subcategories with proper notification. So if, for instance, TVA decides to change this from retirement to low utilization electric generating unit subcategory, then our permit already includes all applicable effluent limitations for that subcategory. So the permit is very comprehensive, and we have really, as a state agency, we have no choice with respect to these effluent limitation guidelines. They're applicable nationwide, and therefore they will be applied to other TVA facilities in the state of Tennessee. We just have started with Kingston. Others are coming up. With respect to the permitting process, and I think John will repeat this later during the public hearing portion, it is important to understand that we are now listening to you and to a permittee, all the interested parties, trying to answer questions and trying to respond to comments. And we will, based on number of comments that we receive, prepare a document called Addendum to Rationale. That addendum to rationale will summarize what the comments were about, and help us make a decision whether what are the parts of the permit that were deemed that needed update. Any changes that need to be made in the final permit will be reflected to the addendum to rationale, which will be a basis for any changes in the final permit. We will talk about receiving comments and timelines a little later. So I will stop right here and open the floor to anyone, floor virtual and real floor, to people that would like to either make a statement or ask a question. I can't guarantee you that I'll be able to answer every question, but I'll give it a try.
All right, thanks, Voyan. Okay, first thing we're going to do is call on participants located in the room here. So does anybody have any questions? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Is this like a conversation, or is this a time for public comment?
This is the time for questions, and we're going to provide answers. At 5:30, when we start the formal public hearing, we're just going to be collecting your comments and not answering any questions at that time.
Okay, so I got a question.
Okay.
In evaluating a permit application like this, is it within TVA, within Tdex purview to ask for a goal on the part of an entity that pollutes? For example, in this case, TVA. Can you say, give me the stages to clean water standards that match the Clean Water Act, and ask them for a plan? Or are you limited under the law in just deciding on this particular permit application, yes or no? That's my question.
Did you hear that okay, Voyan?
I heard that question. Great. It's an excellent question. I also want to say, notice everyone how John said we're going to answer your questions. How he's a given optimist that he thinks that we'll be able to be that good. It's an excellent question because it merges things related to water quality as well as technology. So when we receive applications from anyone in the state of Tennessee, we review what the application brings in with respect to quality. We know what the receiving stream quality is. We compare the two, and we then compare that to technology-based limits. And of course, we don't have those tables in front of us so that we can, and it would take us too long. But if you were to take a look at the permit, existing permit and proposed permit, you will notice that all of the limits in TVA's, let's talk about a draft permit, are technology-based limits. So there were no water quality issues. There were no reasonable potential to exceed in-stream water quality criteria as a result of any of these discharges. So all the limits in TVA's permits are technology-based limits. They're not even close to compromising water quality.
All right. Any other questions here in the room? Okay.
Can you give some examples of those technology-based limits?
All right, John, the camera was not turned. Can you please repeat or change the,
Sorry,
move the laptop a little bit?
I was just asking if you could give some examples of the technology-based limits you're talking about.
Well, I mean, it's all the tables that are in the draft permit are going to be chock full of the examples. So if we look at the flue gas desulfurization, it is going to have limits for arsenic, mercury, nitrate, nitrite, selenium, and all of those are technology-based limits. Now, there's more than one table in there, and they differ. The numbers in tables differ of what type of utilization of energy and energy production is at the facility. So if you look at the, for example, the voluntary incentive limits, they're going to be significantly, not significantly, but they will be more stringent than the set of limits that is for regular facilities but the compliance date will be further in the future. So I don't know that it answers necessarily your question. I don't want to read through the permit and read these limits to you, but the way that they're designed and set up by EPA is that they do research across the nation to see what is a best available technology that is economically feasible for a particular waste stream. And then they look at all of that data and say, you know what, when we look at across the nation, it sure seems like that everybody should be doing at least this much with respect to water quality. And that's how those technology-based limits are derived. I'm making it almost embarrassingly simple. This is millions of dollars of research and work and years of work trying to compile that data. And actually, it's so expensive that these days, if you were to look through the history of the Clean Water Act, most of these technology-based limits were set up in 70s and 80s, while EPA had a completely different budget, and they were able to have a whole bunch of engineers and scientists to work on deriving new effluent limitation guidelines. And then it kind of trickled down, and now EPA is doing very specific research in subcategories of industrial activities and only occasionally updating them. This one was deemed to be significant enough that in 2015 it was revisited. And I think one of those that is coming up that is going to be revisited is going to be meat processing subcategory. Now, you guys don't care for this public hearing, but we have a lot of meat processing plants in Tennessee, so those are going to get more stringent limits in the future.
All right. All right, thanks, Voyan. Anyone else?
Does this permit require discharge monitoring report? It does have DMRs. Are those DMRs uploaded in a database for the public?
I think the question was, will the DMRs be available and uploaded? And the answer is, well, they're not. DMRs are really submitted electronically. So what happens that all of our permittees establish an account with the EPA system called NetDMR, and they log into that system and they enter data into a system. So there's no document upload per se, but all of that data is available on EPA's website called ECHO. So if you go to ECHO and if you type in the TN0005452, you can search any way you want through the history of the plant, and all of that data is available either as a PDF, or what I find more useful is you download it as a spreadsheet format, and then you can take a look at it, do trend analysis, graphs, and anything else. I hope that answers the question if I heard it correctly.
Yes, thanks, Voyan. Anyone else in the room? Okay.
This is more of a logistical question for tonight, but speaking of uploading comments, are the public comments that are being recorded, and will they be uploaded later for public?
Yes, the public comment, I can answer this one, Voyan. The public comment will be uploaded to our website. The public hearing is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to, download that. All right.
Public hearing will be uploaded as an audio file, I believe. And then I think we'll have sign-in sheets are going to be scanned and uploaded. And then any written comments that we receive are immediately uploaded into our waterlog database and published on the data viewer. So the reason for that is that we want to, is twofold. One, sometimes when people read other people's comments, they have other ideas and they say, oh, I never thought about it that way. And then we get more good comments based on somebody else's input. And sometimes probably also people say, well, if somebody already commented on it, I don't have to waste my time and write another letter that'll repeat same thing over and over again. But data viewer is updated as we receive comments. We don't wait to upload things until the last day.
I'm just curious, how does the water quality compare today versus before the catastrophic?
How is the water quality today compared to?
Before the spill?
Before the spill.
Oh, that is a little bit outside of my wheelhouse, but I'll give it a try. We have, of course, very comprehensive statewide ambient monitoring program. And you can imagine that our ambient monitoring was very targeted following the spill at Kingston. And a lot of data was collected. And so that data is available both on TVA's website, and we publish all of that data as a part of our permit and ambient data viewer. So if you go to TDEC data viewers, if you click on the link that says water quality permits, one of the tabs on there is going to say ambient. And then if you click on the tab for water, you will be able to see million something data points across the state. A lot of those are from Kingston. So rather than trusting my interpretation, I would say take a look at yourself and you will see what the data looks like. And it is difficult to say it, but we have not seen, except in the immediate vicinity and immediately following the spill, you would not be able to even tell from the ambient monitoring upstream and downstream that the spill had ever occurred. And that includes not only water column data, but also fish tissue data. Quite extensive sampling was done on fish tissue with respect to selenium, and we have not seen any statistically significant, meaningful increase in selenium concentrations in fish.
All right, thank you, sir. We're going to move to the folks joining us online and allow them to ask some questions. Please go ahead and unmute yourself if you would like to ask a question. It might be a little jumbled here at first, but we'll call on those that speak up.
That looks like Scott. Scott, good afternoon.
Hey, Boyan. I'm sorry that I'm not able to be there in person. Wait, you're not able to be there in person either. So,
Well, I'm not able either, so I'm sorry too, but hey, this is working out great.
so I'm kind of wondering, I mean, so TVA has made, you know, a pledge or a commitment to close down this plant, but, you know, the ash impoundments are going to remain for a little while. How does that permit tie into this? And are they going to continue to operate under this NPDES permit even after they stop sluicing things out of their boilers?
Scott, I don't know at this time. I don't think that this permit modification and in this permit cycle we can speak of what will be the final outcome and the final fate of those ponds. So if I say anything one way or another, it would be as informed as what you know about TVA and their plans. It is just not part of this permit modification.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else online? All right, anybody else here in the room? Okay, go ahead, sir.
I just moved here, so I'm not familiar with a lot of it. What I'm hearing, it's all because of technology and how you, where the water is, whatever the level is, it's gonna stay the same, but you're just changing how you.
John, would you be kind repeating that question for my benefit and everyone else online? Again, the way that the microphone is directed, maybe we were not able to hear the whole question.
That's going to be a little difficult, sir. Can you speak up a little bit more?
Well, It seems to me this is only to do with technology. How are you gonna get the water to the same level it is right now? Why? Why do you bother spending the money if there's gonna be no change in water?
Why we're going to spend the money if,
there's no change in water quality.
oh,
He's asking about the technology.
well, I mean, when looking at these technology-based limits and the timeline, I'm not going to try to argue this on anybody's behalf, but as a citizen, as a taxpayer, I have to wonder sometimes if investing several $100 million on technology that will be implemented in 2023, 2024, 2025, and be online for maybe a year or two before the plant shuts down is the best way to spend money. So it is, but the good news is that the water quality is not compromised by current effluent discharges or by proposed levels of treatment in technology-based standards in the modified permit.
Okay, we have another question. Go ahead.
How much mercury and arsenic and selenium would be avoided if these technology improvements were put in place? If the permit was not modified and TVA stuck to the 2015 agreement, how much of that pollution would be avoided with those improvements?
I do not have a number for you, and I think that what's interesting about the 2020 effluent limitation guidelines and those technology-based limits is that some of them went down and some of them went up. So it would be a strange balancing act that some of the loadings are going to increase or could increase. Remember, those are limits. That doesn't mean the TVA will discharge that much. It just means that they cannot discharge more than those concentrations. So it's a strange thing that happened in October 2020, where some limits went up and some went down. It is 30 minutes after an hour. John, I'm lost in a mountain time here where I am. Where are we at time-wise?
Yeah, we have 3 more minutes for Q&A.
Okay, wonderful.
So probably time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Okay.
I was wondering, because it looks like TVA is following the retirement pathway in this permit modification, but it is not explicitly chosen. I wondered why Tdex is going forward with this without that being explicit, especially if TVA can change its mind later. Why not go ahead and ask them to make that selection in this permit?
We will. It's a great question. It was not included in the draft permit because of the timing, the time when this permit was drafted and the time when we received TVA's notification letter, planned participation option letter, sort of coincided at the same time. So that the permit, the way that it's written, is not explicit in terms of what TVA choice is, but the final permit will be. When I write that addendum to rationale, that will be a chosen path. So if TVA wants to change that path, it's also written in the permit and included. It is a somewhat complicated process. I think EPA on by design made it complicated that people cannot switch from one subcategory to another. And also everyone has to maintain compliance with all applicable subcategories, regardless of which path they take and until that deadline happens for them.
Just a quick follow-up. When would we be able to see that final final version from you, sir?
At the end of November.
Oh, okay.
All right, 1 more question.
So Okay, so this is a modification, changing the permit that was in compliance from the 2017 ELGs to come into compliance with the 2020 ELGs. And then you had referenced that there are even more new ELGs right around the corner. So will this permit include a reopener provision that once we have even newer ELG laws, this permit would need to be modified once again to come to compliance with the new ELGs?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is every permit has such provision. And if I had any hair, I'll be pulling it because EPA keeps changing these effluent limitation guidelines. And you can imagine that that's not easy for a regulatory agency, and even more complicated for those facilities that need to comply with ever-changing effluent limitation guidelines. But the answer is yes, yes, there will be certainly a provision in the permit. It'll be a reopener statement.
All right, thank you, Voyan. And that concludes our Q&A session. We're going to pause for just a quick few minutes. I'm going to go collect the sign-in sheet, and then we're going to begin with the public hearing.
Thank you, John.
All right, we're going to go ahead and begin. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation's public hearing on the state's proposed NPDES permit for the Tennessee Valley Authority Kingston Fossil Plant. I'm John LaCroix from the Office of External Affairs, and I'm serving as tonight's hearing moderator. Please note that this public hearing is being conducted online and in person. This hearing is being held at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time on November 22nd, 2021. Before we begin, please ensure your cell phones are silenced. Fire exits are out the doors in which you came. And participants joining us online can use the chat box or call 865-314-1539 anytime during the hearing if they have technical difficulties. All right, by the entrance, there was a sign-in sheet. Please complete the sign-in sheet before you leave because we're going to use that as contact information for distribution of the notice of determination and as a means of organizing people who wish to make a comment. For those joining us online, we have taken your name, and if you would like, I believe we have emails for everyone. There may be a few folks that I don't recognize. So Petey is going to type in my email address. Please send me an email address so that we have a record of you joining our public hearing. The purpose of this hearing is to receive public comments on the proposed NPDES permit for the Tennessee Valley Authority Kingston Fossil Plant. The comments received orally and in writing will be reviewed by the Division of Water Resources staff. The comments will be reviewed and staff will determine whether changes or additional clarifying language should be made to the draft permit. After this review period, the division will then issue final permits accompanied by a notice of determination document that will provide a written rationale from the division in response to all of the submitted comments. In addition to announcing the final permit action on the division's website, a copy of the final permit and NOD will be sent to everyone who provided their contact information on the sign-in sheet and those that joined us online and emailed me. The announcement of the final permit action will also include provisions outlining how formal appeal of those actions may be made. If you would like to comment in writing but not speak today, you have two options. First, you may submit your written comment before the end of the hearing to a Tdex staff member. Second, you may submit them via mail or email at the contact information on the agenda. Please be aware that the comment period will remain open for 10 days after the date of this hearing. All comments made orally during this hearing are being recorded and will be included as part of the administrative record. All written comments are also included as part of the administrative record. To ensure everyone has an opportunity to speak, I will be limiting comments to 5 minutes. I will be keeping time with a stopwatch. At the 1 minute mark, I'll raise my hand, and at time, I will ask you to please sit down. We respectfully request that you keep the comments to the time, and remember that any comments not provided orally can still be submitted in writing. All comments are given the same consideration. And as a reminder, we will not be answering questions while receiving public comments. A commenter can ask questions as part of their public comment. That question will be answered along with others in the department's official response to comments, and not tonight at the hearing. At this time, I'm going to call on the names of folks who have indicated they wish to comment that are in person. When I call your name, please come up to the microphone, state your name and your affiliation, and make your statements for the record. For those joining online and by phone, I'll signal when it's your turn to comment. Once everyone that has asked to comment has been called, additional comments may be taken from persons who wish to comment but did not indicate so on the sign-in sheet. Please be brief and concise and limit your comments to 5 minutes. All right, our first person is Sierra, and if I mispronounce your last name, Bernadette? Okay, all right. And the next person is Kent Minot. Okay, would you like to come up here and comment? No.
Okay, thank you.
She declined.
I will comment.
All right,
I don't
so
have to lean over and talk right into the shiny ball, do I?
no, you can come right here.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I'm Kent Minot, Knoxville, Tennessee. TVA's posture in getting off coal has been singularly weak. This past Saturday in Knox News, I read Scott Brooks' comment that there's been no decision on retiring the Kingston Coal Plant. What are they all waiting for? The board has already publicized the intent to retire. People in the Southeast need clear leadership. And this permitting process tonight is a great occasion for TVA to step forward. The best way to provide that clarity is to quit trying to hang on to the 2020 effluent limitation guidelines. Those guidelines were, those guidelines were the product of an extremist agenda that looked to rig the rules in order to bring back coal. The thought was coal would be okay if we could just pollute the water a little more. This is an absurd agenda. No sensible advocate is suggesting a return to the massively polluting energy system of 20 years ago, with coal providing roughly half our nation's energy. We have way cheaper and cleaner sources to deploy now. Real leadership from TVA would look like clearly committing to large percentages of renewable energy and steep reductions in fossil fuel burning before 2030. Asking for the 2020 ELGs to be made permanent looks like hedging and dodging about to keep open the prospects of our obsolete fossil fuel system. TDEC would be well advised not to baby them along in this. Some advocates for relaxing these water pollution standards mention that nearby water districts are intaking source water with low levels of toxins. Well, good news, but irrelevant to the question here. Toxins that go into the water don't just disappear. The point to remember about mercury, selenium, and lead is that they are bioaccumulative, which means they travel up the food chain. Mercury settles on the bottom of our rivers and becomes methylmercury, which then gets into microorganisms, which are then consumed by small fish, which are then consumed by larger fish until large and toxic concentrations appear in the meat of the tuna fish, which goes into school lunchboxes all over the country. Water is globally connected. We are obligated to protect not just our immediate neighbors, but the world's food supply as well. So please, tell TVA to step forward and lead. Don't let their leadership shilly-shally around in vain effort to keep open their polluting options. A genuinely green TVA would be the pride of the South. It's time for us all to insist.
All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your comment. All right, next up, we have Dr. William Braden.
Yes.
All right. sir.
John, this is Voin. Would you mind turning the laptop now so that everyone can see a speaker, please? Is that possible?
I'm with Tennessee River Sportsman Association, and what the gentleman said there about the things that are added to our water that come back to us. We're in complaint about the amount of poisons that are being dumped into our water to kill our grass, which in essence goes through the food chain and comes back to us. There's 5 poisons. They're using 2,4-D, chelated copper, which is heavy metal, chemine, diquat, and one other, and they mix them, and nobody oversees how they mix them. But you come in and they just do a discharge, and it kills everything in the slough. And we wind up as the recipients of it. In 2017, we went before the TVA Council and asked them to stop. Bill Johnson said no more. He said, you prove this to me, and I showed him the pictures, and he said no more. But did they stop? About 3 weeks. So they started back, and they did a big discharge in our immediate area where we get our water from in Rockwood. They killed every bit of the grass. They killed all the fish. They killed everything. And when I called on them and asked them, they changed their. They had a placket up that said what they were using. They changed it 3 times in 2 days. And I'm telling you, something has to be done there. They mix this poison. There's nobody there to see them, watch them, oversee them. They're supposed to have a safety permit on them that allows you to know what they're doing. You ask for it and they tell them that's none of your business what we're doing. So I ask you, when you see one of these right here, it kills. It kills everything. It goes all the way through the food chain to the bottom. It kills the bottom, it's crayfish, your helgamites, everything there, and it works its way on through. And TVA they're involved in it. They're spraying ramps in different places, and they say, well, we got to do that. Listen, grass does not grow on concrete, okay? So the Tennessee River Sportsman Association, we're opposed to what's being done, and we asked TDEC to look at it and see their permit. These people claim they've got a permit, okay?
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you being here and commenting. All right, next up, we have Willie Word. Okay. All right, next up, Miss Bonnie Swinford.
Hi, everyone.
First, I want to thank you, John, and Tdex staff for having this public hearing. It's been quite a while since I've been to an in-person public hearing, but even just having an online public hearing where we can hear each other, we can hear what our neighbors, what other community members have to say about a project is just really valuable. So I appreciate it. Thanks for holding this public hearing. My name is Bonnie Swinford. I'm a senior organizing representative with Sierra Club, and I live in Knoxville, but I have lived here in Kingston. I've worked in Kingston, and I've worked on and off with community members in Kingston for more than a decade. I'm also here on my birthday because I really care about this issue. I care about clean water in Roane County. I care about clean water for the people of Kingston. I love this place. I love recreating here. I love Whites Creek. The kids that I hang out with in the summer, Riley's Creek is their favorite place on the planet. I want to see strong protections put in place, and I'd like to see Kingston retired within this permit. If they're going to retire, put that pathway in the permit. But I'm actually here not to deliver my own comments, but to share comments of residents all over the Tennessee Valley Authority who signed on to a letter about this permit. So there were 198 people who signed on to a letter about the modification of the NIPD's permit, TN 005452 for TVA's Kingston Fossil Plant. And about half of them, 82 people, added their own personal comments. So I'll be submitting all of these to you tonight. And these signatures indicated a broad and diverse support for TDEC to act and to add a retirement selection into the permit so the community has certainty about when this plant will stop polluting Tennessee waters. The following statement is the letter that these folks signed on to. Kingston is a source of dangerous water toxins, discharging harmful pollutants like mercury and arsenic into the Tennessee waters. And the best way to end this toxic pollution is to retire Kingston. The final permit should incorporate TVA's compliance selection. There's an existing NEPA process where TVA is exploring retirement of Kingston by 2026 and replacing this generation with solar and battery or gas plants. And this needs to be reflected in this NIPD's permit application and the plan. The Kingston community and surrounding waterways, including the Clinch River, have had a huge environmental and human health impact from coal waste because of the Kingston coal ash spill in 2008, the largest industrial spill in the United States. Because of this, the NIPDs should follow the retirement pathway with the soonest possible retirement date and the least amount of coal waste discharge. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bonnie, and happy birthday. Okay, I see that we have one person, Mr. Todd Waterman, who would like to give us a comment. For those folks joining us online, I'll let Mr. Waterman go first, and then please either turn your camera on or type in the chat box that you would like to give us a comment, and we'll call on you after Mr. Waterman. So Todd, you have the floor.
Thank you, John. I'm Todd Waterman from Clinton. Voyan and John, it's good to see you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. There's no question coal ash is toxic and does not belong in our waterways. The Kingston spill made that stunningly clear. Coal ash killed friends of mine who helped clean it up. It's trying to kill many more of them. Asking to dump even more coal ash into the Kingston community is an insult to the memory of those workers who have died and are dying, an insult to their needlessly grieving families, and an insult to the entire community. The EPA is certain to very soon increase restrictions on such discharges of coal ash into our waterways, and for very good reason. It's obvious TVA wants to pollute while they think they can still get away with it, even though they've committed to meeting the higher standards enforced before 2020. Don't let them get away with it. hold them to their word, and make the coming EPA standard apply as soon as it's issued. I very much appreciate your protecting us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Todd. We appreciate you commenting tonight. Okay, up next is Mr. Scott Bamberry.
Okay, I'm just going to be super brief here. I have seen in the past where NPDES permits for one of these plants has been used administratively to do closure activities. And I hope that when TVA closes this plant, hopefully by 2025, that this permit will be revisited and that there will be additional opportunities for public comment regarding how this permit might be used for closure activities. That's the gist of my comments. And we've seen it before that permits kind of got ridden on top of to accommodate closure activities, dewatering, discharges associated with the closure of the facility. And I hope that people will have another opportunity to come back at it when that happens. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bamberry. We appreciate you being here tonight. Okay, at this time, are there any others in the room who would like to comment? Okay, go ahead. And then,
absolutely. Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much to TDEC for holding this hearing, to everyone who came and attended. My name is Adam Hughes. I'm the East Tennessee organizer with SOCM, our statewide organizing for community empowerment. First time I ever came to Kingston was in late 2014 because TVA was trying to put in a new coal ash landfill on a site that had had multiple identified sinkholes through their own engineering report, including one that had had a catastrophic dropout just a few years before. My girlfriend and I spent Valentine's Day in Roane County that year because we were really charmed by the community. We've been back here many times to listen to music, to spend time with friends, as recently as this Friday to go around talking about this hearing. Enjoy some delicious cannolis from the bakery in Harriman. So Roane County, Kingston particularly, has become a place that's been very important to us. And I've also had to come back here year after year at public hearings because TVA has kept wanting to put more coal ash in the water, try to argue against stricter pollution levels, trying to build more coal ash landfills in unfit sites. And it's really difficult for me to see that and to see the way that TVA has treated Roane County. I lost a friend who I'd met through this kind of work, who was a worker in the coal ash cleanup, who passed away earlier this year, and he's inspired me to want to get up and say something. We do know that TVA had committed to meeting more stringent limits on this permit. We do know that they're taking advantage of a recently passed rule that eases those limits. They're applying for a new permit just so they don't have to pay to install new pollution control technology in a year where they've made a record $1.5 billion, which I think is a real shame. So my only comment is, given all this, that people in Roane County, that all of us need the Department of Environment and Conservation to really demand the special obligations that TVA holds to this community, and that TVA seems to be continuously unwilling to meet. So please demand nothing but the most protective standards under the Clean Water Act, which is supposed to eliminate all pollution in the course of this permitting process. And to TVA, please do a better job for this community and everyone who loves it. Thank you.
all right, thank you, Adam. Anyone else in the room? All right, is there anyone else joining us online that would like to make a comment? Okay, nothing heard. Again, if you have written comments which you wish entered into the hearing, please give them directly to a Tdex staff present tonight, or you can submit them via email or mail at the information provided on the agenda and in the chat. Written comments will be received for 10 days and through Monday, November 30th. At this time, we will adjourn the official part of the hearing, and I appreciate everyone's participation tonight. Please complete our survey. You can find it over there at the sign-in table. We want to continue to improve this public participation process because we feel that this is your process. We want to make it as easy for you to join us as possible. Staff will be happy to stay and answer any additional questions you may have. Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you.
Y'all have managed to pull off what TVA says they can't possibly do. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
All right. Thank you, Boyan.